Good day! For today's video, we will talk about the evolution. First, let's talk about the simple meaning of evolution. According to Jones Campbell and Rose in 2019 says that biological evolution is the process of changing organisms to survive and reproduce which has been going on for millions of years. Evolution may be defined as any non-directional change or any cumulative change in the characteristics of organisms or populations over many generations. In other words, descent with modification. It explicitly includes the origin as well as the spread of alleles, variants, trait values, or character states. And now, let's talk about the history of evolution and the theories of evolution. Evolutionary concept first appeared in early Greek writings, for example, in the work of Anaximander and Empedocles. The growth of scientific observation and experimentation led to some theories of evolution beginning to emerge from the mid-16th century. Despite the idea of human progress being central to the Enlightenment of the 18th century, this did not lead to the theory of evolution. Pierre-Louis Moreau de Maupertuis proposed the spontaneous generation and extinction of organisms as part of his theory of origins. George Louis Leclerc, a prominent naturalist of the time, explicitly considered and rejected the possible descent of several species from a common ancestors. The physician Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, offered some evolutionary speculation in his book Zoonomia, but they had no real influence on subsequent theories. The Swedish botanist Carolus Linnaeus devised the hierarchical system of plant and animal classification that is still in use today in modernized form, showed an inclination towards the ability of species to mutate as a result of his observations of variations among species. In the early 19th century, the French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck presented a clearly stated evolutionary theory. He is one of the best-known early evolutionists. Lamarckism, or theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics, believed that the neck of the giraffes evolved so they can reach high leaves. He also believed that organisms were driven from simple to increasingly more complex form. And now, we have Charles Darwin from 1809 to 1882. He wrote the book The Origin of the Species in 1859, which talks about the natural selection. What is natural selection? It is the process through which population of living organisms change and adapt in order to survive.
This is Lithopodius nulla, a simple creature with a tendency, like any other species, to reproduce offspring. Lots of offspring. Although the offspring inherit many characteristics of their parents, no two individuals in the population are exactly the same. This variation is vital to the survival of the species, as only a fraction of the Lithopodius will actually survive long enough to reproduce themselves. As a result, only those with characteristics that are best suited for survival in the environment will pass on these successful traits to the next generation. Those with characteristics less suited to the environment are less likely to survive and reproduce. This process is called natural selection, and over time and generations, it leads to the build-up of favorable characteristics in the population of a species. The result is a transformation of a population over time to suit its environment. This is known as adaptation. Environmental pressures can also change. But as long as variation in a population exists, new adaptations can occur, ensuring the survival of the species.
And now, let's go to Herbert Spencer, a philosopher, was also an influence in evolutionary theory during the latter part of the 19th and early 20th century. He popularized a number of slogans including survival of the fittest, which was taken up by Darwin in later editions of Origin of Species. Spencer's ideas damaged proper understandings of natural selection, and Darwin often attacked him for his fundamental generalizations. The missing link in Darwin's argument was provided by Mendelian genetics. Gregor Mendel was an Augustinian monk who carried out a long series of experiments with bees in the garden of his monastery. His paper, published in 1866, formulated the fundamental principles of the theory of heredity, and it is still current today. In the 1880s, German biologist August Weismann published his germplasm theory defending natural selection. His ideas become known as Neo-Darwinism. Neo-Darwinism is a merging of the concept of natural selection and Mendelian genetics, resulting to a unified theory of evolution. The rediscovery of Mendel's theory of heredity in the 1900s led to an emphasis to the role of heredity on evolution. And now, let's proceed to Hugo de Vries. He proposed a new theory of evolution known as mutationism, which discounted natural selection and was heavily opposed by naturalists, especially biometricians. Biometricians is led by Karl Pearson, and they defended natural selection. Then, what is mutationism? In mutationism, living organisms can develop changes to their genes and greatly alter organisms. In the 1920s and 30s, theoretical geneticists including R.A. Fisher and J.B.S. Haldane in Britain and Sewall Wright in the United States used mathematical arguments to support natural selection and contributed to the downfall of mutationism. They also provided a theoretical framework for the integration of genetics into Darwin's theory of natural selection. In 1937, Theodosius Dobzhansky published Genetics and the Origin of Species, which combined Darwinian natural selection and Mendelian genetics. This led naturalists and experimental biologists to understand the process as one of genetic change in populations. By 1950, acceptance of Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection was universal among biologists and is now widely accepted in society and taught within schools. Some creationists still oppose it. Here are the facts or the answers against the myths of evolution. Myth says that humans evolved from monkeys, but the answer is humans didn't evolve from monkeys, they just share a common ancestors. Evolution, it's only a theory, but the answer is the word theory has a different meaning inside the scientific community than it does elsewhere. If nobody saw it, we can't be sure it happened. In fact, we can see evolution happen. Science can say anything about origins, but in fact, evolution comes into play after life form. Evolution means humans are just animals, but in fact, humans are highest form of animals that capable of rational thinking. There are no intermediate fossils. The fact is, the fossil record shows not that there is a gradual accumulation of change, but that for long periods of time, little or no evolutionary change accumulates in most species. Evolution is not testable, but not all science investigations involve direct experiments. Evolution is just random. Random does not mean meaningless. It is something cannot be predicted with better accuracy. Complexity cannot arise naturally. Traits do not need to function for some ultimate final product in order to be selected for. Lastly, evolution can account for morality. evolution is a religion, but the fact is, evolution is a scientific fact which is supported by an insurmountable of evidence. For the last part of this video, we will present some of the examples of evidences that will explain the evolution of organisms.